Ladies and gentlemen, love is in the air. It's always in the air. Every single day, new people meet each other and begin what could possibly become a romantic relationship. And since this is a real-life phenomenon, it's no surprise that we see it depicted in fictional media. Everyone has their favorite rom-com movie. Everyone has two characters in their favorite anime that they ship together. But what about video games? What about the Yakuza series specifically? What does the Yakuza series teach us about love and romantic relationships? Well, first and foremost, the Yakuza series isn't known for its depiction of romantic relationships. It's definitely not the first thing that pops up in your head when someone mentions the series by name, and most fans don't pay that much attention to the already existing relationships in the games. But one thing is for certain, romantic relationships in the Yakuza games definitely do exist. In fact, there's way more than you think. But for this video, I'm specifically going to analyze the 3 relationships that have the most material to discuss. In this lovey-dovey expedition through the Yakuza series, we look at the way Majima x Makoto, Kiryu x Sayama, and Ichiban x Saeko are depicted and analyze how well their romances are depicted. So if you have a significant other, make sure you're watching this with them. If you don't have a significant other, just grab your favorite drink and snack of choice and enjoy the ride as I analyze romance in Yakuza. In Yakuza 0, Majima is trapped in the metaphorical cage that is Sotenbori after enduring a whole year of torture in a Yakuza black site by his boss Shimano. His oath brother, Saejima, is serving what's believed to be a life sentence in prison after carrying out a hit that Majima was also supposed to be a part of but was absent. In order to get out of this cage and make things right for his oath brother, he has to get back into the Tojo clan. But the only way he can do that is if he satisfies his supervisor Sagawa by making 100 million yen at a cabaret club. That's not the only requirement though, or even the most important one. He also has to assassinate someone named Makoto Makimura, a Chinese immigrant in search of her brother who ran away to Japan. Makoto Makimura moves through several jobs in the city of Sotenbori, trying to find out where her brother could possibly be, asking every fellow Chinese person she comes across. Unfortunately, she becomes a victim of human trafficking after being lied to by a man who claimed to know his brother. This man was Jun Oda. Oda kidnapped her and locked her in a cage. Suffering extreme trauma, Makoto went blind, Oda's bat tattoo being the last thing she saw, and then she was trafficked to a Korean crime syndicate. Luckily, she was eventually rescued by an acupuncturist named Wen Hai Lee, and shortly after that becomes an employee at the massage parlor he owns. Unbeknownst to her, in this time period, she automatically inherits a piece of land that her grandfather used to own after he dies.
What? 何がことあんで。
どなたですか？あれ、お客様ですか？おかしいな。すみません。誰かいらっしゃってますか？
なんやこいつ目が。
もうドア開けっぱなしで出かけちゃったのかしら。
These two meet each other for the first time in an almost slapstick-like manner. Majima has a deed to do, but he doesn't know if the woman he's just come across is Makoto Makimura, so he has to be very discreet so he doesn't get caught in his assassination plot. But that doesn't work. Now, if you were to judge, would you say that these two are going to develop feelings for each other? I'd say not really. What is established in this scene is that Makoto clearly hasn't recovered from her experience with human trafficking. She's still suffering from the trauma she has because of that experience. Majima, on the other hand, completely oblivious to this, is trying to figure out what sort of situation he has gotten himself into.
違うや俺は客や客やって聞けやおいええから聞けや泥棒やったらとっくに逃げとるわ落ち着けやな
どこにいたんですか
俺は今店に入ってきたとこやいきなりあんたがすごい勢いで突進してきたもんやから避けきれんかったんやビビったのは俺の方やで
でも今日の予約はもう入っていないはずです。
そうなんかいや実はもう体がバラバラになりそうなくらい辛くてなそしたら知り合いにこの店の店長の話聞いてななんやゴッドハンドっちゅう噂らしいやんかせやから飛んできたっちゅうわけなんやけどおい
すみません怖くてすみません
ええんやで店長はおらんのか
今日は出かけて帰ってきませんすみません
なんで謝るんや分かったとにかく出直すわ
本当にすみません
泣くなや
どこがお辛いんですかさっき体がバラバラになりそうって治療されるなら早く予約をされた方が
ああそれはもうええんやほなまだな
やっ
ぱり
He's accused of being a thief, and he needs to figure out how he can escape this situation without causing this woman any more trauma. His solution? To get a massage from her. Not a bad one considering the fact that she's blind and can't recognize that Majima is a Yakuza.
違う言うとるやろがほら分かったお姉ちゃんにやってもらおうかなそれなら納得してもらえるかほな姉ちゃんの話聞かせてくれやなんや趣味とかあるんか
そうですね展示の本を読んだりもしますけどラジオを聞く方が好きかな
ラジオか人と話すのが好き言うんやったらあんたホステスなんか向いとるんとちゃうか
私がですかさすがにそれは
What you just saw was basically a glorified first date. She asks him about what he does for a living. He asks her about what her hobbies are. The quintessential questions to ask on a first date. They continue talking about what you'd expect two people to talk about on a first date until her boss arrives back in the parlor.
いらっしゃいほう
The boss is a little suspicious of Majima for obvious reasons. Majima and Lee fight each other until they're interrupted by a bunch of other Yakuza who then kidnap Makoto as soon as she returns.
3 hours later.
After a series of perilous tasks, Majima eventually rescues Makoto from those Yakuza, and he escorts her through the city until they find a hiding place. Majima decides not to kill her. I wonder why that is. Throughout Chapter 7 and Chapter 8, Majima and Makoto grow a bit closer. In Chapter 7 specifically, we see them bond over shared trauma after Majima finds out about Makoto's backstory.
少しやけど俺もお前に似たとこがあるんや俺は片っぽだけやが目が見えんそれだけやないいつ死んでもおかしない場所で俺も長いこと監禁されとった
Later in this chapter, we see them literally flirt with each other.
目は
もう慣れとる。そない不自由しとらんわ。せいぜい男前が台無しになっただけや。
男前なんだ。
目が揃っとったらな。お見せできんのが残念やで、ほんま。
Technically, that was flirting.
残念。
So far, we've seen that Majima and Makoto are pretty similar in the sense that they both feel like they're trapped. Majima by the Yakuza, Makoto by her trauma, and the fact that multiple different factions of Yakuza are chasing after her. At the end of Chapter 8, Majima and Makoto are separated, but I'd say that we saw a substantial growth in their bond together. And these chapters also kind of solidify that they do have chemistry with each other. Majima and Makoto eventually come into contact again, but in that time that they're separated, a lot happens. Makoto finds out everything about the piece of land she's inheriting from her grandfather.
祖父の聞いたこともない土地のせいでこんなことに巻き込まれて。
And the fact that the Tojo clan is after her because of that, because they want to own that piece of land. After arriving in Kamurocho, she also finds out that her brother, the person that she's been looking for since forever, since she set foot in Japan, has unfortunately been murdered by the Tojo clan in their pursuit of that piece of land. Majima finds out about the fact that Makoto is inheriting that piece of land the Tojo clan is after. Sagawa, remember that guy? Yeah, he takes Majima to Kamurocho in order to track down Makoto for themselves because he still supposedly has an assassination deed to do. Once in Kamurocho, Majima is told that his boss, Shimano, wants to see him. Shimano reveals that he was the one who ordered Sagawa to order Majima to kill Makoto. That was a convoluted sentence. However, Shimano never actually intended for Majima to kill Makoto. He wanted Makoto to willingly give the piece of land to Shimano and Sagawa with Majima's help, so that Shimano could rise to power within the Tojo clan. Shimano simply gave the kill orders so that he could humiliate him for his unwillingness to murder. Yeah, Majima's boss is one evil motherfucker. But hey, at least Majima doesn't have to kill the woman he's about to develop feelings for, right?
あいつらを殺して。きっとあなたは兄がそのために私と出会わせてくれたんだよ。だったら兄は私が仇を討つのを望んでるってことでしょ。
お前の兄貴がそんな男のわけないやろが。待てよ。
ほっといて。もう一人で平気だから。
誠。
ほっといて。
なあ、たこ焼き食いかんか。
It's very clear that Majima still cares about Makoto. You'd think at this point in the story, Majima shouldn't care about Makoto because of the fact that he doesn't have to assassinate her anymore. But he still cares. Remember when I said he's about to develop feelings? Yeah, I was wrong. He caught feelings a long time ago. He even remembers that Makoto likes takoyaki.
なんさ気付けや。2つくれや。
はいよ。
はよしてや。
はいはい。優しいんだね。
うるさいわ。
いい人じゃない。ね。
ぐだぐだ言うとらんとさっさと焼けや。
いい人です。私なんかのために大変な目にあってもまだ私を助けようとしてくれる。 この人がいなかったら今頃もう私は美味しそうですね。いい匂い。
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the moment that Majima fell in love with Makoto Makimura. Now, the question we must ask ourselves is why? Why did Majima fall in love with Makoto? And why did Makoto reciprocate those feelings? Well, just like love in general, it's complicated. I think in order to answer that question, we have to consider the two perspectives in this equation. Majima is a Yakuza. He's been one since he was a teenager. The Yakuza life is pretty much all he knows at this point. He's so dedicated to this life that even after enduring a whole year of torture in a literal Yakuza black site at the mercy of his boss, he still wants to get back into the Tojo clan and the Shimano family. Makoto, on the other hand, is still ridden by the trauma of her past. As a victim of human trafficking, something she still struggles to talk about. Essentially, what I'm saying is that they're both very constrained to something from their pasts. So yeah, when they're together, at least after Majima rescues Makoto for the first time, they bring out parts of each other that they've suppressed for a while. Really good example of when this happens is when they flirt for the first time. The fact that they bring the best out of each other, sides of themselves they've had suppressed because of circumstance and trauma, is the main reason why they fall in love. The chemistry they have is definitely grounds for a relationship. So, do they tie the knot? Well, no. They still have a problem to solve. The Tojo clan is still after that piece of land, and Makoto now holds ownership of it. After that takoyaki scene, they both find a bench to sit on. Makoto asks Majima to buy more takoyaki, while Makoto waits at the bench. And unsurprisingly, when Majima comes back, he discovers that he was swindled. She leaves him a message saying to meet her at the empty lot the next day. She's planning to handle the Tojo clan on her own. Makoto meets with Sohei Dojima by herself, and she asks him to kill his lieutenants in exchange for that piece of land. But Dojima refuses, saying that as long as she silenced their plans for that empty piece of land can persist. She is shot by their hired hitman, just as Majima bursts through the doors. If you were still skeptical about the romantic connection between Majima and Makoto at this point in the story for some reason, then that scene right there should have sealed the deal for you. Yakuza 0 is a love story. Makoto is taken to the hospital to recover from her bullet wound, and Majima doesn't leave her side until she's taken into the operation room. As the doors to the operation room close, Majima breaks down, vowing that he'll grant her wish of eliminating the Dojima family. He thus goes on a mad dog rampage through the Dojima family HQ, and eventually gets to the point of almost killing Sohei Dojima himself. But he's interrupted by Sarah, who reveals that Makoto has given him possession of the land, and that Makoto has recovered but is now in a coma. Can they still be together in the end? The last scene in Yakuza 0 before the credits is probably one of the best in the whole series. I'm going to focus solely on the fact that it tells the audience that Majima is obviously still in love with Makoto. He's realized that the prospect of them being together is pretty much impossible, though. At the end of the day, he's still a Yakuza and she's a civilian. And not any ordinary civilian, a civilian with a lot of baggage that's best dealt with in a therapeutic setting and eventually left in the past. In Majima's mind, she wouldn't be able to finally live a life without scorn and trauma and leave it in the past if she's in a relationship with him. And this fact hurts Majima greatly. And at first, I didn't understand Majima's thought process because in my mind, the two could still be together. The only thing that Majima would need to do is leave the Yakuza, but then I remembered what happened to the last guy that tried to do that. Majima would never be able to do that. And that's how I came to empathize with Majima and understand his perspective. He still loves her, but he knows they can never be a thing. But he still wants her to be happy. So he makes sure that she remains with her other potential to-be lover, the doctor that's been helping her regain her eyesight.
けじめつけてくれや。俺のためにも。あんたの？ええからさっさと答えんかい。
Majima motivates the dude to confess his love to Makoto, something Majima himself really wants to do but can't, so he does it vicariously through this doctor.
大丈夫でしたか？何かされたんじゃ。
何も。全然平気です。
そうか。よかった。あの人、悲しそうな目をしてたな。でも先生、あの人と何を話してたんですか？
いや、そうだ。今から少し話する時間ないかな。
はい。
Well, that was a tearjerker, and a very bittersweet ending. 18 years later, they cross paths again. This is depicted in the Majima Saga mode in Yakuza Kiwami 2. Remember that massage parlor that Makoto used to work at? And remember the fact that it was owned by a dude named Wenhai Lee? Well, I forgot to mention that. Unfortunately, he's not with us anymore because... So after that happened, and obviously everything else in Yakuza 0, Makoto reopens that massage parlor, which obviously closed because... And she's been operating it for 18 years in hopes of finding the man who saved her life many years ago so she can thank him. In February, Makoto is working her last week at the massage parlor, as her family will soon move overseas. She is called to serve a client. The client, who is the one and only Majima, tries to hide his face in case she recognizes him. Makoto catches Majima looking at her watch and then explains that she had to replace the band of the watch after it wore out, though she still prefers the old brown leather instead. Why does she prefer the old brown leather instead? Well, that's obvious. Still unaware of who he is, she recollects the story of how Majima saved her, then brings him up to speed on what has happened in her life since then. After Majima's massage is finished, he subtly says goodbye to Makoto one last time.
以前どこかでお会いしましたっけ？お体楽になりましたか？
おかげで18年もののコリが取れたわ。
Makoto and her family eventually leave Japan. While they're aboard a plane, Makoto opens the gift that the receptionist at the massage parlor had given to her before her departure.
パスポート。
これ誠さん宛てで店に届いてたんです。
She opens the box to find replacement watch bands in the same style as her old ones.
昔私がしてた。どうして？古い型なので替えがこの色しか見つからなくて、元々のデザインがもっと落ち着いてて好きだったんですけどね。ベルトはさすがによれちゃったんで交換したんですけどね。もう20年ぐらいかな。ずっと大事に使ってるんです。
and realizes that the client was the same man who looked out for her in 1988. Now realizing she has thanked her savior, she tells her husband that she has no regrets.
もうすぐ新しい生活が始まるんだね。
心残りでもあるのか？
ないよ。本当に。
So what purpose do these scenes serve? Why did RGG go out of their way to make this? I say they did it because they wanted to tie what they thought was a loose thread in Yakuza 0. I mean, Makoto finally gets to say thank you to Majima, in the place where they first met no less, something she's obviously really wanted to do since the last time they saw each other was in 1989. So really, it serves as an ending to Makoto's character arc. And for all the Majima x Makoto lovers out there, if Yakuza 0's ending didn't convince you that they will never be an item, then this for sure will. And if you're sad, I understand that. They had a real chemistry, but at the same time, their paths kind of had to diverge. If they continued to cross, it probably wouldn't have ended very well. Not to mention the fact that it wasn't like Majima didn't like being a Yakuza. He was, and still is, dedicated to that life.
俺は何があっても親父の子ですわ。
Sure, Makoto brought out a different side of him, but I guess Majima wanted to keep that part of himself buried behind the Mad Dog persona. Why? I honestly don't know. The dude's just complicated like that. And you still have to keep in mind that there isn't a reality where Majima leaves the Yakuza for obvious reasons. But yeah, that's where this love story ends. I'll say it again. It's very bittersweet. And spoiler alert, it's probably the most well-written romance in this whole series because it kinda goes downhill from here. We're not gonna see anything horrible, but the quality is definitely gonna deteriorate a little bit. So I made sure I started this video with, the best romantic relationship. So you should be thanking me for that because now we're gonna fall off a little bit. Kazama Kiryu, the legendary dragon of Dojima, a living legend. He's been through it all. Spent 25 years in prison to take a fall for his brother. Battled the dragon of Kansai. Fought a CIA agent. You get the point. But every legend needs a bride by his side. It can't just be explosions and dudes tearing their shirts off. A legend needs a little love in his life. So does Kiryu have that? Has he ever had that? Kiryu is a complicated man. A lot of Yakuza fans like to call Kiryu a virgin, and yeah, I know it's a joke, but that actually couldn't be further from the truth. No, the correct word to use to describe Kiryu would be celibate, specifically voluntarily celibate. Yeah, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, Kiryu is celibate. And to examine why that's the case, we have to turn the clock back in time to when Kiryu had his first love. Kiryu's first love interest is a glorified cardboard cutout of a character. Honestly, I hesitate to even call her a character because she's barely a character. She serves almost solely as a plot device in Yakuza 1, and she doesn't even make an on-screen appearance in Yakuza 0. She's merely mentioned in what's virtually a throwaway line.
今度はユミちゃんにも会ってみたいな。歓迎するわよ。
あいつはまだ学生だよ。
I'm talking about Yumi Sawamura. Now, given everything I just told you, it shouldn't be surprising that there isn't really an answer as to why Kiryu is in love with Yumi. You could very much say that he loves her because she's the love interest, a label she's pretty much defined by. Okay, in all seriousness, the only details we're given about Yumi and Kiryu's history is that they grew up in the same orphanage and that in the mid-90s he bought her a ring. The latter is portrayed in the most boring section of Yakuza Kiwami. Aside from those two pieces of information, nothing else in relation to Kiryu's romantic connection to Yumi is referenced or told to us. You could say that Yokoyama-san had an epiphany while he was writing Infinite Wealth when he realized that Kiryu's first love interest was barely a character. So let's try to give her a little bit more substance by making a callback to that ring Kiryu bought for her. And yeah, you can see what they were trying to do here, but sadly this scene does not strike a chord in any way whatsoever, for reasons previously stated. But hey, we all gotta start somewhere, right? I mean, do you remember who your first crush was? I do. Her name started with the letter S. Maybe she's watching this video, you never know. If you are, I feel like we could have been really good friends, and I really regret the fact that I didn't talk to you more in our last year of high school. At one point, yeah, I had feelings for you. I had feelings that you could describe as romantic, and initially, yeah, you were the first time I ever had feelings. Wait, we're getting a little bit off topic here. My deepest apologies for that. Let's talk about Kiryu's second love interest. Known as the Yakuza Huntress, Kaoru Sayama is one of the best cops in the Osaka police force. She's an incredibly determined and intelligent person who refuses to back down from her goals once she's set on them. Technologically proficient and physically strong, her most passionate objective in life is finding out the truth about her birth parents, regardless of how difficult or painful that discovery might be. Yeah, that's right, she's an orphanage, but unlike Kiryu, she found her way into the police force instead of organized crime to be closer to her parents in one way or another. Back when she was a teen, Sayama overheard a part of a phone call where her adoptive mother blamed the Tojo clan for Sayama losing her parents. Due to overhearing this call, Sayama became determined to discover what happened to her birth parents and how the Yakuza, specifically the Tojo clan, was connected to it. This is why she initially joined the Osaka police force. As we already know, Kiryu is an orphan. After his parents were killed by his then-to-be adoptive father, he spent the first few years of his life in an orphanage. After some time, he eventually came to idealize the Yakuza, and started to desperately express his desire to join the Yakuza to his then-to-be adoptive father. Eventually, he does actually join the Yakuza, the Tojo clan to be specific. But a few years before he does that, on the fateful day that the Tojo clan decided to do a raid on their longtime rival, the Jingwan Mafia, with Shintaro Kazama leading it, Kiryu finds himself in a precarious situation after making the stupid decision to follow Kazuma a few moments before he begins the raid. While there, Kiryu interrupts Kazuma's negotiations with two Jingwan Mafia members, walking in on them with a lead pipe. In the confusion caused by Kiryu's sudden appearance, Kazuma is forced to protect Kiryu by killing the Jingwan Mafia boss, who had thought Kazuma betrayed them because he thought Kiryu was one of Kazuma's men. Little did Kiryu know that this would have some sort of impact on his future love interest.
どっちかが死ぬまで勝負は終わらへんわ。くそげ、覚えとけ。勝負はまだ終わっとらんで。
本部内の全員連行や。
はいはい。
桐生一馬さんですね。
そうだ。
府警4課の佐山薫です。あなたを傷害の現行犯で逮捕します。
The two meet each other for the first time when Sayama arrests, quote-unquote, Kiryu. The initial meeting is so cold and fast that Kiryu isn't even able to get a single word in, and as soon as his hands are in those cuffs, they hit the road.
俺だけどこへ連れてくんだ。おい、聞いてんのか。
ここまで来ればもう大丈夫だわ。
どういうことだ。
傷害罪は表向きの口実。あなたの身辺保護を頼まれたのよ。
身辺保護。
逃げようとしたら即座に逮捕するわ。
Okay, so it's pretty obvious from the get-go that these two are going to develop feelings for each other. All the classic markers of a rom-com are present in this story. First off, the opposites attract trope is utilized. It's kind of self-explanatory, but basically what that trope is when two characters who are complete opposites, whether it be in personality, position in society, or even species, these characters just somehow happen to fall in love and become a couple. A dragon and a donkey? Sure thing. A cop and a Yakuza? That's Sayama and Kiryu. The moment these two are paired together, the writing is on the wall for this to be a romantic relationship. Is it going to be a romantic relationship that works out in the end? Let's find out.
どこを撃たれた？
大したことないわ。
弾丸が貫通してない。このままじゃ危険だ。おい、近くの病院はどこだ？
そうって。
After Sayama is shot, she tells Kiryu to take her to a bar in Sotenbori called Aoi, the bar her adoptive mother owns. After which, Sayama is left with her adoptive mother, who pulls the bullet from her shoulder and patches up her wounds, before letting her sleep to recover. Now, they don't know who the sniper was. They have a couple of ideas on who it was, but they eventually come to the conclusion that Sotenbori isn't safe and they need to go to Kamurocho.
Oh.
どうしたんだ？
大丈夫よ。ちょっとめまいがしただけ。
まだ熱が引いてないんだな。
大丈夫って言ってるでしょ。ほっといてよ。
Okay, isn't it a little early to be getting intimate? This relationship seems to be progressing really fast, or maybe it's just Kiryu's lack of social awareness. Nonetheless, Kiryu takes her to the old bar he used to frequent for recuperation.
ここはどこ？
俺の馴染みの店だったところだ。
そう。
After feeling better, Sayama takes a shower.
思ったんだけど、隣の店にシャワーがあったから勝手に使わせてもらったわ。
そうか。
多分昔風俗店だったんでしょ。狭いフロアにあんなにシャワールームを設置して。関西なら一発で検挙だわね。
体はもう大丈夫なんか？
やっと熱が引いたわ。傷口ももう痛まなくなったし、これでいつものように動けるわ。
まだ無理しない方がいい。
Now, after getting out of the shower, she unwraps her towel in front of Kiryu. She is literally butt naked in front of Kiryu in this scene. These two barely know each other, and within the space of a few hours, Kiryu is holding her in his arms, and Sayama has no problem being naked, vajayjay and bare ass on display in front of Kiryu. Yeah, I don't think you'd be wrong if you said that a sort of physical intimacy has been established at this point. Anyway, relationship escalation aside, Kiryu, like the gentleman that he is, turns away after seeing her naked out of respect because, you know, he isn't a pervert, and being a pervert is bad. A lesson Hideo Kojima needs to learn. Anywho, Sayama tells Kiryu that her obsession with the Tojo clan stems from her suspicion that they killed her birth parents.
ママが話していた通り、私は本当の親を知らないまま育ってきたの。小さい頃から病気で死んだと聞かされていたけど、ママが何か隠していることはうすうす感じてた。そんな時ママが電話で怒鳴っているのを聞いちゃってね。
なんて言ってたんだ？
薫は登場界のせいで不幸になったってね。
登場界のせいで？
あの時ママは私の過去を知っている人と話をしてたんだと思う。それから十数年、何度となくママにそのことを聞いても何も教えてくれない。 そんなこと聞いても幸せになれないって言うばかり。
お前の勘違いってことはないのか。
ママの反応を見ればわかるわ。絶対に何かを隠してる。でもママを問い詰め続けるのは私も辛い。だから警察官になって自分自身で調べる道を選んだの。
お前は両親を登場界に殺されたと思っているのか。
これだけ自分の生い立ちを隠されたらそう推測するのが普通でしょ。
それを確かめるために身辺保護の名目で俺に近づいたってわけか。
相手に手の内がバレちゃ刑事失格よね。
お前の気持ちわからないでもない。
え？
俺にも隠された過去があったんだ。
隠された過去？
ああ、だが俺はそれを知ってしまったことで苦しかった。知らない方が良かったとさえ思った。もしかしたら人間には知らなくてもいい過去があるんじゃないのか。
Kiryu cautions her against digging up a buried past, as he had recently learnt a dark truth about his own past. That dark truth being that his adoptive father murdered his parents. But Sayama is still nonetheless determined to find out the truth. After this point, as Yakuza 2's story continues, the relationship between Kiryu and Sayama progresses. After what's clearly a physical attraction between the two is established, because of their mutual interest in fighting the Omi Alliance and Tojo clan, they spend more time with each other. At some point, Sayama meets Majima.
なんやキリュウちゃん、もう女作ったんかい。この好きこましげ。誤解すんな。照れることないやんけ。なあ姉ちゃん。
府警第4課主任佐山薫です。よろしく。
府警4課？姉ちゃんデカなんか？キリュウちゃんどないなってんねん。それより。
And at some point, they both find out about the Jingwan Mafia.
ウォン派。韓国の組織か。
間違いね。
聞いたこともない組織ね。
まあ知らなくて当然だ。日本のヤクザと違って韓国系の組織はマフィア化している。表だって大門を掲げるような真似は絶対にしない。
Let's talk about the Jingwan Mafia and their connection to Sayama. Basically, in the early 1980s, when Sayama was born, the Jingwan Mafia was a very notorious Korean criminal syndicate in Kamurocho, known for their brutal war against the police and the Tojo clan. Sayama's mother at one point was the wife of the Jingwan Mafia boss at the time. This conflict reaches its climax in an event known as the Jingwan Massacre. During a raid on the Jingwan Mafia by the Dojima family, Sayama's birth mother, caught in the middle of the conflict between the two groups, tried to jump out of a window, only to be stopped by who would eventually become Sayama's father, Jiro Kawara. With the aim of helping her hide from the Jingwan Mafia and the Dojima family, Kawara took Sayama's mother out of Kamurocho and snuck her down to southern Japan in the Kansai region. 6 months after the Jingwan massacre, Sayama's mother reunited with and married Kawara and gave birth to Sayama. At some point after her birth, Kawara attempted to turn down a law enforcement job opportunity in Hong Kong as he believed it would leave his family vulnerable, but was ultimately convinced by Sayama's mother to accept the offer for his career, as she didn't want to burden him. However, Sayama's mother was murdered by a Jingwan assailant from mainland Korea for revenge reasons, after Kawara departed to Hong Kong, which was ultimately how Sayama was left with an adoptive mother. None of this backstory is revealed to Sayama until the latter half of Yakuza 2, so the whole game up until that point is Sayama and Kiryu trying to find where each puzzle piece fits in the grand conspiracy/mystery they're both involved in. Along the way on that journey, Sayama and Kiryu meet with Date, who learned after some investigating that one of Sayama's superiors, an Osaka PD investigator named Besho, was the one who allowed the Jingwan massacre to happen. With this revelation in mind, Sayama then decides that they should go back to Osaka to do some further investigating. But at this point in the story, Kiryu still has some Yakuza shit to deal with in their current location, Kamurocho.
返してくれてると思ってた。でも自分は裏でヤクザとつるんでたなんて。あなたには悪いけど、まず最初に府警に行ってもらうわ。人言派の事件を調べるのが先よ。
勝手にやれ。
俺は合田会長を探す。
So he wants to stay in Kamurocho. This sparks a not so great reaction from Sayama. Because Kiryu is still officially in protective custody of Sayama, remember, she's a cop, she forces his ass to go along with her to Osaka. But what Kiryu didn't know in that moment of frustration is that this trip to Osaka would lead up to the specific moment when the two of them fall in love with each other. As soon as they arrive in Osaka, they meet Besho.
今日付で身辺保護の任務は終わりや。命令や。
理由を言ってください。
人言派が絡んでるとなりゃかなりの危険が伴う。
私が女だからですか？
ちゃう、そんなこと言うとるんやないわ。4課の捜査範囲から外れたってだけや。
今さらそんなこと言わないでください。犯罪者を取り締まる、それが私の仕事です。
今回の事件はヤクザ狩りのようにはいかんのじゃ。
相手は同じ人間じゃないですか。
お前は人言派の恐ろしさを知らんからそんなことが言えるんや。あいつら女やろうが子供やろうが手加減せんのんじゃ。
でも私は。
これは命令や言うとるやろ。
あんたら何してんねん。
A bunch of dudes try to harass Sayama, then Kiryu comes to the rescue.
Oi! 何やってる？待ちなさい！
こっちよ。
どこ行った？
ごめん。
いや。どうしたんだ？
いや、私たちなんか変だなと思ってね。ねえ、今夜空いてる？
Then we get a good old falling in love montage between these two. After that montage, there's a really gorgeous cutscene in which both of them open up to each other more.
いい気分だ。
もうちょっと飲むやろ？買ってくるわ。
悪い。気が利くんだな。
You know, I find it ironic that Kiryu gave Sayama that compliment, given the fact that he was forced to go on this trip with Sayama after being held at gunpoint. That's not what I'd call considerate, but maybe Kiryu is a little in his feelings right now, and because of that, he forgot about being held at gunpoint. Anywho, Kiryu tells Sayama that she shouldn't hide her real self, that the most important part of life is to be yourself.
無理して褒めたってビール以外出てこんよ。
別に無理したわけじゃねえよ。
何言ってんの？うちはね、そういうおだてとかお世辞は好きちゃうし。
本当に素直にそう思っただけだ。
せやからさっきも言うたけど、褒めても何も出てきえへんよ。
そういうところは案外可愛いんだな。
なうちは今まで優しいなんて言われたこともないし、可愛いなんて言われたこともない。男勝りで現場でもうちが乗り込んだらみんな引いてるわ。せやからあんたが言うてることが嘘やってことくらい分かってるし、そんな言葉言うてもらうためにここに連れてきたわけやな。
そいつらには分からねえだけなのさ。
何が？
お前が刑事である以前に女だってことがさ。周りが何て言おうと気にするな。人間、自分らしくいることが一番大切なんじゃねえのか。
そりゃそうやけど。
今のお前は周り気にして突っ張ることに必死で自分自身を見失っちまってるんじゃねえのか。世の中にはお前のいいところを大切にしてくれるやつだってきっといるはずだ。どうした？
Now, the first question I asked myself after rewatching this specific cutscene was, what exactly would compel Kiryu to give Sayama this advice? Is he speaking from personal experience? Did Kiryu grow up his whole life hiding the real version of himself? Judging by his portrayal in Yakuza 0, I'd say the answer to that second question is no. So he probably isn't speaking from personal experience, but maybe it's because of what he's observed in other people throughout his life. Like Nishiki, for example? Yeah, that is probably where Kiryu is coming from.
ああ、そうだな。
え？
俺はお前の過去の全ては知らねえ。でも俺は誰が何と言おうと本当のお前は優しい人間だって思ってるぜ。おせっかいだったかもしれねえが一人の男の意見として覚えておいてくれ。
It's just one man's opinion, and Kiryu wouldn't be wrong with that statement, except he's not telling the whole story. It's one man's very biased opinion. Biased in what way? Well, he's obviously caught feelings. He's obviously in love. And yeah, with that being the case, the question we must then ask ourselves is why he's falling in love with Sayama. Why is he falling in love with Sayama? Why is Kiryu attracted to Sayama? It's obviously not just a physical attraction. It's a little bit deeper than that. He's falling in love with Sayama mainly because of her qualities as a person. Specifically, she has qualities that Kiryu lacks but admires. Let me explain. Sometimes people fall in love with those that truly inspire them and challenge them to be the person they want to become. Sometimes we fall in love with those that take us out of our comfort zone. Sometimes we fall in love because we believe the other person can complete us with the qualities we lack, and sometimes we fall in love to escape from ourselves and reality. And sometimes we fall in love because it just feels good. I've never been in love before, but what I just read probably describes it both perfectly and eloquently. I think Kiryu is falling in love with Sayama because he really admires her qualities as a person, her tenacity, her supposed kindness, her determination to take initiative. These aren't qualities that Kiryu necessarily lacks, but he's definitely not known for taking initiative. Even as early as in Yakuza 2, he's actively running away from his problems and responsibilities regarding the Tojo clan. I mean, it's the game where he asks Daigo to become the 6th chairman, someone who had no experience whatsoever with such leadership responsibilities. To put it simply, Kiryu likes Sayama because of what he lacks and probably what he wishes he had. And that really shows in this cutscene.
橋の上で待ってるわ。
わかった。
ねえ。ありがとう。
Remember the backstory behind how and when Sayama was born, and how she didn't know about her own backstory until a later point in the game? Yeah, this is that point. After the previous night, Sayama and Kiryu continue their investigation in Osaka. They find out that they have to locate a Jingwan Mafia member named Murai. someone who witnessed the Jingwan massacre. After some confusing bullshit having to do with the board game Shogi, Sayama and Kiryu eventually locate Murai. With some persuasion, Murai details the events that took place on the day of the massacre and tells them the names of the two other men who survived, Dae-jin Kim and Young-min Yi. However, he also says that besides the 3 Jingwan survivors the police knew about, the Jingwan's boss's wife, who's eventually revealed to be Sayama's mother, and her baby also escaped the massacre. As Murai describes what transpired, Kiryu realizes that he was present when all of this occurred. However, before he can elaborate, a group of Jingwan assassins burst in looking to kill Sayama, Kiryu, and Murai. Kiryu and Sayama beat up the assassins, but one of them manages to fatally wound Murai by throwing a knife into his gut.
しっかりして。
After which they all kill themselves by consuming concealed cyanide capsules. Shit's intense, man. Okay, so they're not a couple yet, but it's clear that they're both in love, right? So I'd call what happens next after that their first fight. Kiryu reveals to Sayama that he's essentially the reason why the Jingwan boss was killed. Because when he wasn't supposed to, he followed Shintaro Kazama to the building where the Jingwan massacre would eventually take place. Because of this grave mistake he made, Kazama kills the Jingwan boss, and that's when the night began to unravel. Because of his mistakes of the past, Kiryu says Sayama should kill him to avenge her parents.
さようなもんなんだ。俺を撃たないのか。どんな償いでもすると言ったろ。
かっこつけるのもいい加減にして。親の敵を取らせれば自分が犯した罪が軽くなるとでも思ってんの？罪を償うから俺を殺せだなんて。人はね、そんな簡単に割り切って生きていけないのよ。
Who may have died because of him. So that was an interesting but justified reaction from Sayama. She essentially called out Kiryu's lack of maturity because that really isn't an appropriate reaction to finding out you made a grave mistake. Kind of shines a light on Kiryu's savior complex and self-hatred. And he doesn't actually learn anything from this because in later games he would react in the same way whenever he found out that he was, in one way or another, a burden to someone or something. This is a flaw Sayama recognizes. At this point in the story, it's clear that Sayama and Kiryu are very well acquainted with each other. It's really no surprise that their romance is calcified soon after this. So Kiryu is stabbed, but despite that, he walks all the way back to Sayama's adoptive mother's bar, and he eventually finds out that Haruka, his adoptive daughter, has been kidnapped and taken to a place called the Osaka Castle. Kiryu takes it upon himself to go all the way to this place, his stab wound not fully healed yet. And after a whole ass Tarantino-esque sequence, he eventually rescues Haruka, and Sayama comes to the rescue too. They all go back to the bar Sayama's adoptive mother owns, and find a note left by her adoptive mother stating that Sayama's biological father is still alive and he's in Tokyo. They all drive back to Tokyo, and on the way there, a conversation between Haruka and Sayama is held while Kiryu is asleep. Now, this wouldn't be the first time I talk about and analyze this specific scene. I did that in my video dedicated to Haruka specifically. So go check that out after you finish watching this video, and make sure you subscribe too if you don't feel like watching another one of my videos right now and would rather do that later. just for good measure. Getting back on track, I'm going to repeat almost verbatim what I said in the Haruka video. Haruka and Sayama start to talk about Kiryu and his relation to both of them, and Haruka reveals that she's taken notice of the fact that Kiryu has taken a liking to Sayama. She knows this because she's noticed that Kiryu acts differently around Sayama. She's noticed that Kiryu acts around Sayama the same way he acts around herself. He's more open and relaxed. He feels more free to be himself. That's everything that Haruka observes. And really, it's just further emphasis of the fact that Kiryu has fallen in love with Sayama. To put it bluntly, he should put a ring on it at this point. Skipping a bunch of cutscenes that are irrelevant to the topic of this video, we get to Yakuza 2's climax before its finale. There's a Millennium Tower scene where Kawara, remember him? He's Sayama's soon-to-be-revealed biological father, and Sayama's adoptive mother are also present.
自分の娘の前で人を殺せるのかな。
待って。娘って誰のこと？まさか。
そう、あなたのことですよ、佐山薫さん。
あなたが私の父親なの？
違う、こっちへ来んな。
我々のボスだった男の女房ジョン・スヨンとこの男がひっついてであんたが生まれた。あんたの父親はこの河原二郎なんだよ。
黙るこの野郎。
河原！俺がこの26年間どれほど辛い思いをしても耐え忍んできたのはな。
So, Sayama's biological father is fatally shot, and as he's held in Sayama's arms, he reveals everything about the events that led up to her birth. And then he dies.
お前の手を握るのは俺の指を掴んで笑っていた時はちっちゃな手だったのに俺と母さんの分まで幸せになるんだぞ。
お父さ
んありがとうな。
Now, that was fucking intense, right? All of that dumped onto Sayama, and immediately after that, her biological father kicks the bucket. That's got to be beyond overwhelming. And they've still got some shit to do regarding this whole convoluted-ass conspiracy, right? But before they can do that, Kiryu needs to make something abundantly clear to Sayama.
どんな事実でも受け入れられると思ってた。でもあなたの言った通りよね。やっぱり辛くなっちゃった。でももうやるしかないのよね。
大丈夫だよ。
え
And there it is, ladies and gentlemen, a good old-fashioned kiss scene. There's really not that much to talk about here aside from the fact that Kiryu just calcified their love. Which is interesting because now that I think of it, Kiryu is the one who's been really vocal about his attraction to her. Their romance is mutual and reciprocal, don't get me wrong. Sayama was literally butt naked in front of him, and she forced his ass to go to Osaka with her. But Kiryu is definitely the one shouting it from the rooftops, which makes sense given the fact that he was very reprehensive about confessing his love to his previous love interest, Yumi, until the moment before she died. So that's probably why he decided to be more rambunctious about it with Sayama. Wait a minute, I just realized that Kiryu fell in love with Sayama only a year after Yumi died. He really moved that fast, huh? Yeah, that definitely proves that she was a cardboard cutout of a character. Even Kiryu felt that way. So before we continue talking about the romance between Kiryu and Sayama, I need to quickly tell you about who Ryuji Goda is. He's the main villain in Yakuza 2, and he's Sayama's half-brother. That's it. That's all I needed to clarify. Let's get back to the romance. After finding out that Ryuji is her half-brother and realizing that she still has one last surviving family member by blood, Sayama decides to try to approach Ryuji to talk him down from his violent mission to conquer Tokyo.
今の私にできることは、郷田隆二に全てを話し、この無駄な構想に終止符を打つこと。
Kiryu's obviously going to intervene after finding this out, and that sets the stage for the most stupid Yakuza finale of all time, and the finale of this romance, supposedly.
お前は用済みだ。なんてことをしてくれたんだ、このバカ野郎が。少しでも動いたら前技打ちますよ。龍二。男はのバカなくらいでちょうどええんや。
After all of that hilariously disastrous writing, that bomb is about to go off, and in their last moments, both Kiryu and Sayama are very horny, so they make out one last time. They don't make it past second base because they don't have the time, but mouth-to-mouth French kissing suffices nonetheless. This all happening while Haruka is in a helicopter watching them, by the way, but who gives a fuck when you're about to blow up? Oh, but it turns out it was all a ruse. And the camera pans to Sayama, Kiryu, and Haruka staring happily at the sky. Isn't that a happy ending to this romance? So what do we take away from this? Are Kiryu and Sayama really meant for each other? Is she a keeper? Is he a keeper? Do they actually gel well? Okay, that's too many fucking questions. Let's just get to the point. Sayama and Kiryu have very similar backstories. They have physical chemistry. Sayama inspires and excites Kiryu. Sayama reciprocates those feelings. But they live in two opposing worlds. But you know what they say? Opposites attract sometimes. So this is the beginning of a series-long relationship, right? Sadly, no. In Yakuza 3, Sayama gets an offer to work in a police department in the United States of A. We see her one last time right at the aftermath of Yakuza 2's ending. They're still at the graveyard, and this is where we see Sayama reveal that she's going to America. So basically, yeah, they wrote her out of the story. Why? Weren't these two head over heels in love with each other? Fun fact, in an interview with Famitsu, Masayoshi Yokoyama talked about the initial idea he had for Yakuza 3's story, and it was both interesting and disappointing to read through. In response to a question regarding where he wanted to take Kiryu's story at the time, he said, quote, "That's right. Actually, when I was working on Yakuza 3, I thought about making a road trip story about Kiryu. After the incident in Yakuza 2, Sayama Karu left a tape for Kiryu, and it was Bob Dylan's Blowin' in the Wind. Following the lyrics of the tape, you travel from Okinawa to Sapporo and discover a hidden secret. Something like that. As you know, that never came to fruition. I don't think I need to explain why it's absolutely heartbreaking that this wasn't Yakuza 3's story, because what his initial idea was is way, way better than the Yakuza 3 story we actually got. If they used this story instead, they wouldn't have had to write Sayama out of the series. Not to mention that the story is way more interesting and captivating than the Yakuza 3 story we actually got. Imagine how fun it would have been to play through that. But yeah, we have to deal with the end product we got. All things considered, how do we interpret what's essentially a retcon? Well, I guess you could say that he genuinely thought Sayama would return to Japan after her stint in America, but then I guess he just forgot about her after Yakuza 3. I don't know, man. Maybe he wasn't in love with her after all. It could be that he was just feeling horny after losing Yumi, and if I'm being honest, I don't blame him. In Yakuza 5, Kiryu was hiding. He needed to maintain a secret identity under the name Taichi Suzuki. It's been 6 years since his stint with Kiryu Sayama, so he hasn't felt the touch of a woman for a while, until Yakuza 5.
「これでも俺なりに精一杯茨の道を歩いているつもりなんですよ。読んだよね。
ただいま。もうお湯沸かしっぱなしだよ。ただいま。
But in this instance, Kiryu did not reciprocate the love he received. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Mayumi Madarame. She keeps Kiryu company during his undercover stint in Fukuoka.
そういうことはやらなくていいっていつも言ってんだろ。
私がやりたくてやってるんだし、いいじゃない。
身の回りのことは自分でする。勝手なことはしないでくれ。
もう相変わらず釣れない人ね。ネクタイ曲がってる。はい、これでよし。あ、おかえり。
また来てたのか。
うん、今日は夕方までのシフトだったからね。
お前も自分の生活があるだろう。俺のことはほっといてくれていいんだぞ。
またその話？ねえ、私が来るのって迷惑？
いや、そうじゃない。いろいろと世話をしてもらって助かってるさ。
じゃあなんでそんなこと言うの？まさか他に好きな人ができたとか。
いや待て、そんなわけないだろう。
だっておかしいじゃない、急にそんなこと言うなんて。
別におかしくはないさ。むしろ恋人同士でもないのに半同棲みたいにしている今の方が不思議だろ
う。だったら恋人同士になればいいんじゃない？私はいつでもいいけど。
すまない。今はまだ。
Basically, Kiryu is hiding in Fukuoka so his presence doesn't interfere with Haruka's idol career, and so he doesn't have to deal with Yakuza shit. But Daigo Dojima, being the caring nephew that he is, has to keep watch over him to make sure nothing crazy happens to him. But Daigo obviously can't do it himself. That would be too suspicious. So he asks Tadashi Madarame, a Yakuza patriarch in Fukuoka, to keep watch over Kiryu. Tadashi doesn't do it himself either, though, given the fact that he is bedridden, so he sends his daughter, Mayumi, instead. But Kiryu doesn't know anything about this arrangement in the beginning chapters of his story in Yakuza 5. So in those beginning chapters, he's really confused on as to why this woman, whom he met at a restaurant 6 months ago, has practically been living with him for 6 months. He appreciates everything that she does for him, but he would still prefer to be on his own and take care of himself. Here's the thing though. Mayumi's caught feelings for Kiryu. She desperately wants to be in a relationship with Kiryu. I mean, she desperately throws herself at him.
Mayumi. どうしたんだお前。
半年も一緒にいてこういうこともなかったんだし、いいじゃない、たまには。
Sadly, she does that at the wrong moment because a few moments earlier, Kiryu found out the truth about her and why she's staying with him. She ultimately feels guilty for her betrayal and takes her to see her father, who explains that Daigo insisted that he watch over Kiryu and had Mayumi look after him. Before Kiryu leaves the room, Mayumi has some words for Kiryu.
Kiryu さん、私があなたを騙していたことは一生かけても償います。ですからどうか父の頼み引き受けてもらえませんか?
Which is basically code for I'd still let you hit 100 times over condomless if you want, because I really want that. Like, really, really want that.
結局俺は一人じゃなかった。一人になることなんかできなかった。理由はどうあれ、弱りきっていた俺のそばにこんないい女を置いてくれたこと、感謝している。絶対に青山の好きにはさせない。それだけは約束する。それじゃ。
すまんかったわい、まゆみ。
And that right there is what we call non-reciprocal love. Have you ever been in a situation like that, dear viewer? If you have, I feel for you, because that's got to be the worst feeling in the world, and the worst situation to be in. And if I'm not mistaken, love is a very intense feeling, a feeling that can take over you and consume you. I can't imagine what it's like to feel all of that, only to have the person you're in love with not feel the same way. On the contrary, I can't imagine what it's like to be on the receiving end of someone else's love, but you're the one that doesn't reciprocate, like Kiryu was. But we also have to ask ourselves this question: why didn't Kiryu like Mayumi? Well, we don't really get to know her that well, so I don't know if we can answer that question adequately. She's in quite a few cutscenes, but there's really not anything substantive about her character, aside from the fact that she's very kind, gentle, and a considerate person. But the answer to that question is still nonetheless obvious, I guess. Kiryu just wasn't interested in romantic relationships at the point of his life he was in Yakuza 5. He really just wanted to be alone. But he could have had sex with her at least. She literally threw herself at him. You're probably saying that to yourself, remembering that very, very, very awkward scene. And yeah, that may have been what you would do in that situation, but that's just not how Kiryu operates. He's practically voluntarily celibate, so even if an attractive woman signifies their attraction to him very loudly, he's not having it.
少し疲れてんな。
そしたらシャワーあるで。ついでに体も洗ったろか。その場合は追加料金やけどな。
そっちは間に合ってるが、シャワーは助かる。
せやろ。
ついでに腹も減ってんだ。
そしたらあれか。ご飯にする？お風呂にする？それともだし？
シャワーの後、飯食って寝る。あとは構わないでくれ。
ノリ悪いやんか、上流。
Really, Kiryu? I understand why you didn't like Mayumi, but Akame? You said no to her? Maybe he didn't like her personality. Kiryu will never beat the celibate and or virgin allegations. Or will he? This is where the queen of the Jomi Jewel comes in, Song-hee, a leader of a notorious Korean criminal organization. She leads with an iron fist, but she has a softer and friendlier side too. She's an extremely skilled fighter and isn't afraid to get ruthless. She's also a bit of a tsundere. For those in the audience who don't know what that is, a tsundere is, and this is the Wikipedia definition, a Japanese term for a character development process that depicts a character with an initially harsh personality who gradually reveals a warmer, friendlier side over time. And that's exactly what happens with Song-hee after she meets Kiryu. In Yakuza Like a Dragon, the game she was introduced in, she doesn't reveal this side of her, but when Kiryu comes to town, she literally cannot hide the fact that she is head over heels for Kiryu. And unsurprisingly, Kiryu doesn't reciprocate. And this is probably the most egregious example of Kiryu fumbling the bag unnecessarily. They are both from the criminal underworld. The worlds they come from are the same. This is something they bond over, which is something Kiryu couldn't do with any of his previous romances, because all of them were either regular citizens or on the opposite side of the society he lived in. Now, you could give some grace to Kiryu in this situation. Why, you may ask? Well, it's revealed in Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth that he has cancer. And because of that, you could say that he doesn't want to burden anyone he could potentially have a romantic relationship with the fact that he has cancer and is presumably gonna die soon. And that's not a bad argument, but I don't necessarily agree. He should live life to the fullest with those he cares about before he kicks the bucket. And that includes romantic relationships. If it's any consolation though, Kiryu does consider her a friend and helps her fight an insurrection against her organization.
おい、お前、ご苦労だった。助かったぞ。うちの組織にお前ほどの者がいたとはな。
女王のお役に立てて何よりでした。
顔を見せてくれないか。
申し訳ありませんが、それより早く怪我人の手当てをしないと。
さっきかぶっていたコミジュルの仮面はマスターから借りたのかな？
ん？さてな。何の話だ？
She was very adamant about the fact that she didn't want Kiryu to get involved in that debacle because she didn't want to worry him, but Kiryu, being the stubborn bastard that he is, does it anyway, solidifying that he may not have the same romantic feelings she has for him, but he still cares about her as a friend.
そうだ。せっかく綺麗な眺めだ。写真でもどうだ。俺が撮ってやるよ。
写真か。確かにここで撮ったことなどなかったな。ねえは、せっかくと言うなら桐生さんもどうだ？まあ無理にとは言わんが。
俺もか？では二人で撮るとしよう。
ありがとう桐生さん。
So what's next for the Dragon of Dojima when it comes to romance? He only spent like 5 minutes with his first love interest, Yumi, who's barely a character. Sayama was low-key the love of his life. Someone who's very similar to him presented him an opportunity for a relationship. It seems that women regularly throw themselves at him. So is he ever going to find someone to accompany him on the road trip that is life? Well, I'm happy to say that the answer to that question is actually uncertain. You were probably thinking he was going to die alone, especially considering the fact that in Infinite Wealth he has cancer. But in the post-credits scene of that game, it's revealed that he's getting treatment for his cancer. So Kiryu's future isn't completely bleak. To add on to that, Sayama returns to Japan in Infinite Wealth. And she doesn't have a ring on her finger.
今は警察官としての新しい夢を追いかけてる最中なんです。だからそっちに全力で行きたいっていう気持ちなんですけど、どこかでまだあの人を待ってるのかも。一途でいい女だと思いません？
佐山、実はいいんだ。だってさ。いいんだ。
Well, that's a missed opportunity. Maybe he'll change his mind when he's done with his cancer treatment. Because honestly, Kiryu needs to stop being a stubborn son of a gun and actually be happy for once. Okay, so Yakuza has a new protagonist. His name is Ichiban Kasuga. His first game was Yakuza Like a Dragon, and unlike Kiryu, he doesn't necessarily have a love interest at first. But in his second game, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, he develops a romantic interest in a character named Saeko. Whether or not that romantic interest is reciprocated is a subject we'll discuss later. First things first, regarding their backstories, I want to contextualize these two characters to find out where the differences and similarities lie in their backstories. Saeko Makoto is a hard-working, intelligent, self-sufficient woman. Relative to most Yakuza characters, she lived in a household most would consider normal. You know, the classic nuclear family unit. She didn't get along with her dad and sister, and this was the case because she was more than a little bit of a control freak.
あの子のやることなすこと全部に口出してたから。
うちは物心ついた頃から母が病気がちでね。
Due to her mother falling sick when Saeko and her sister were very young, Saeko basically had to step up and fill the shoes that her mother would have been in. She was able to do this because she inherited her mother's traits more than her father's. Her mother was independent and self-determined, while her father was more reclusive and shyer. While Saeko inherited her mother's traits, her sister inherited her father's traits. With all that context in mind, it makes sense that she was very controlling of her sister. In high school, Saeko took up part-time work due to her father not making enough money, which is where she learned how much money nightlife workers earned. Shortly after that, she eventually started working in that world. She would end up out-earning her father, resulting in him becoming reliant on her. As time went on, her relationship with her father and sister continued to sour, eventually ending with Saeko leaving the home and cutting contact with them. Having left home, Saeko works her way through the nightlife industry as a hostess, eventually taking over one of the clubs she worked at, as co-owner after the owner is murdered. I don't know if this will make sense to most of the audience watching this video, but I'd say that Saeko is literally the personification of whatever the Japanese version of Black Excellence is. If you know, you know. Ichiban's story begins in a locker. As a baby, he was left in a locker by his mother to keep him hidden from his father's Yakuza family. His father did some shit that we won't get into right now that really pissed off his family patriarch, and now they're out to inflict harm on him in any way they can, which is why he's left in the locker by his mother. He's taken out of the locker by a man named Juro Kasuga, the manager of a soap land, which is where Ichiban spent his early childhood. He wasn't only raised by his adoptive father, he was also raised by the people of Kamurocho, given the fact that he lived in a place that would attract all kinds of people. Although it was a loving and welcoming environment, he lived in poverty, and the people who raised him were considered trash by the rest of society.
世間じゃクズって呼ばれてるような連中が俺の親代わりでして。
To escape this reality, he spent his nights playing a game called Dragon Quest in the back office of the soapland and dreaming of being a hero one day. The year after the death of his adoptive father, he stopped going to junior high school at 15 and resorted to whatever means necessary to earn money and support himself, leaving his education behind for good. He spent most of his days fighting people for money, regardless of who they were. However, one day he severely injured and hospitalized a Yakuza. The family the Yakuza belonged to sought revenge and managed to capture him. They beat Kasuga to the brink of death, and fearing for his life, he blurted out the name of a feared Yakuza, Masumi Arakawa, saying that if they killed him, they'd be hearing from him. In reality, he had never met the man, and was only aware of him due to his reputation. They summoned Arakawa to their office and asked him to collect Ichiban in person, assuming Kasuga was a part of his family. To Kasuga's surprise, Arakawa arrived. The men demanded he takes responsibility for Ichiban's actions. Arakawa offered them his finger in exchange for Ichiban's freedom, and the men quickly let Ichiban go. This makes Arakawa a hero in the eyes of Ichiban. He started idealizing him, eagerly wanting to become a member of his Yakuza family. He waited outside of the Arakawa family office for 100 days before Arakawa finally gave in and agreed to swear him into the Yakuza family at age 16, officially making Ichiban a Yakuza.
来い。
Funny enough, he actually becomes one of the most goofy and friendly Yakuza you've ever seen not long after joining the family. I guess it unlocked the real Ichiban Kasuga that was hiding all along. I distinctly remember scrolling through a Reddit thread about 4 years ago. The post was titled, "Does anyone ship Ichi and Saeko, or is it just me?" And there was a really interesting comment I came across. I'll read it to you. Quote, "I prefer a friendship route for them. As a woman, I've always typically got on better with boys/men, but finding representation of male/female friendships without an eventual romantic resolution, or at least hints towards that, is pretty rare in media. So Saeko being part of the friendship group and treated pretty much like all of the other guys as like one of the guys was welcoming and refreshing. I 100% understood why that person felt that way, mainly because I was also of the opinion that these two characters continuing to be friends was the best direction to take their relationship in writing-wise, because there really wasn't any strong indication in Yakuza Like a Dragon that these two harbored romantic feelings for one another at any point in the game.
気持ちよかった。あれ、もう風呂上がってたのか。すまねえ。
別に 男の裸なんて見慣れてるわ。
まあそれもそう。
That's not the only example, but we'll start from the beginning, when Saeko and Ichiban initially meet each other.
真面目だったし繊細な人だったのかも。
真面目で繊細な人？そうかしらね。
菜の葉さんか。
そっか。お父さんの件も片付いたしな。元気になったんだ。ていうか見違えたよ。改めて見るとやっぱセクシーじゃん。
バカ。店長のためにわざわざ来てくれたんだ。わきまえろ。
Did that really seem like the start of a romance story to you? It didn't to me, and this is only emphasized over and over again throughout the whole game. That is, that Ichiban, Nanba, Adachi are friends with Saeko and don't view her as a subject of attraction, minus Nanba's initial remarks about her body. We can just forget about that. In other words, she's very easily welcomed into the boys' club without any stupid drama or shit gender politics.
よし、帰ろうぜ。サイコも夜道は気をつけてな。
大丈夫だよ。あいつなら襲われても追い返すぜ、きっと。
まあね、襲ってくるやつがかわいそうって話。
間違いねえ。じゃあな。
あのよ。
あれ？忘れ物？なんか私預かったっけ？
そうじゃなくて、うちはすげえ狭いし汚いんだけどさ。
え？
そんな部屋でもよけりゃ来ねえか。
いいの？
おお、その代わり後からやっぱ汚いから嫌だとか言うなよ。
あんた優しいんだね。なんでもない。ありがとう。
And I could see why someone like that Reddit commenter would appreciate that, as it is very refreshing to see. I mean, who didn't love the dynamic Ichiban's party had in Yakuza Like a Dragon? They were a joy to watch, as friends.
加減にしてよ、この変態！
店長からはお前を好きにしていいって言われてんだ。さっちゃん、大丈夫か？
あのハゲ、私の脇の下舐めようとすんのよ。
そりゃあ変態だわ。
やるならキスとかおっぱい揉むとか普通のセクハラにしろってのよ。
その価値観も独特だわ。
おう。
マジか。
Again, aside from non-canon side stories, there was no direct or even indirect indication that these two were developing feelings for one another. With that being said, there is a counter-argument I could consider. That argument being that some romances don't start out as romances in narrative storytelling, and sometimes in real life, people only become a romantic item after being friends for a while first. And I respect that argument, but I'd like to ask whoever may make that argument this question. How often does someone develop romantic feelings for someone they've been friends with for years and are used to being only friends and nothing else with that person? Let me put it this way. For men and women out there who have friends of the opposite gender, can you imagine being in a romantic relationship with them? A lot of people who have real friends of the opposite gender would probably either verbalize their disgust at that thought, or they would simply say no. Some friendships really are just like that. Because Being friends with someone and being in a romantic relationship with someone are two vastly different versions of a relationship. They don't easily coalesce, contrary to what many people think. Now, some friendships are a bit different and do leave room for growing into something more, but Ichiban's and Saeko's dynamic did not give me that impression. They seemed like friends who would stay friends. By the end of Yakuza Like a Dragon, they're still friends. Anyway, I'm rambling. We haven't gotten to the game where they actually entertain a romantic relationship, so let's finally talk about Ichiban and Saeko's little love story in Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. After the ending of Yakuza Like a Dragon, Ichiban starts working as a job contractor for the company Hello Work.
私、今回担当を務めます春日と申します。よろしくお願いいたします。
失礼します。3番テーブルご指名です。
ごめんなさい。失礼します。
Saeko continues running the hostess club she's now the co-owner of. After 6 months of being preoccupied with their very stressful jobs, Ichiban and his friend group finally get the chance to have a get-together at a bar.
じゃあ改めて乾杯！乾杯！
After Saeko goes to the bathroom, Nanba and Adachi start pressing Ichiban about his supposed crush on Saeko.
で、さっちゃんとはその後どうなんだよ。え？
デートの一つくらいはしたのか。何言ってんだよ。
They both encourage him to be more upfront with her and ask her out on a date, because life's short, you know?
人生は一度きりだ。悔いのねえようにしろよ。
足立さん。
ほら、ナンバー、帰るぞ。
おいてくな
さっちゃん。
ん？
いや。
何？どうしたの？
いや、なんでもねえんだ。
そう？じゃあね。
さっちゃん！
ちょっとさっきから何？
悪い。あのよ、今度どっか遊び行かねえか。
何？もう次の飲み会の話？次はうちの店でやる約束でしょ？
いや、そうじゃなくて、2人でどっか行かねえか。終わった。だよ、もう。もしもし？
ごめん。急に言われてテンパっちゃって。
いや、こちらこそ大変ぶしつけなお話で。
来週の土曜なら空いてるんだけど。
はい？
遊び行くんでしょ？2人で。
それはつまり。
楽しみにしてる。じゃあまた。
So Ichiban is successful in getting Saeko to go on a date with him. Now it's time for him to prepare for the date. Now, a lot of people complain about Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth's beginning chapter being too long with too many boring cutscenes. And I understand why someone who doesn't give a fuck about a romance subplot would feel that way. But personally, I found Ichiban's preparation for the date scenes interesting to watch. Because I'm an overthinker, those scenes made me think deeper about the social dynamics and the unspoken rules around the first date. What's the ideal time to show up for a date? What's the best outfit you could wear? What's the best place you could pick to eat? These questions and a few more are posed then talked about in preparation for Ichiban's date with Saeko. Adachi and Nanba serve as Ichiban's wingmen, giving him all the advice they think he needs. Regarding those questions, Nanba and Adachi have different answers, and Ichiban has to choose whose advice would work best for him on his date with Saeko. Adachi's philosophy is that a guy should be as impressive as possible on the first date and make it a day to remember for the woman in question. Nanba's philosophy when it comes to first dates is that you should play it cool and calmly and be more vulnerable and honest about yourself. And this is all interesting to think about in my opinion. Personally, I think showing up about 20 minutes early is the best way to go when it comes to first dates. When it comes to outfits, you should probably pick what would best showcase your fashion sense, if you have that. And I abide by the cliche that you should be yourself. Because on the first date, you're trying to establish the dynamic you're gonna have with the other party involved. In other words, you're trying to get a feel for each other. You're trying to find out if you can get comfortable with that person, if you're on the same wavelength, if you think in the same or similar rhythm. All that to say that it is in your best interest to be yourself on the first date and showcase the best aspects of yourself, whether it be your humor, your fashion, or your taste in food. Now, does Ichiban make the decision to be himself on this date with Saeko? Let's find out. What we see in the depiction of Saeko and Ichiban's date is very cliche. The classic fake relationship trope where they pretend to be boyfriend and girlfriend.
だよね。いかにも私の彼氏って感じで。
彼氏？そんな急に？あれ？サエコさん、偶然だね。何してるんだい？
何って見たらわかるでしょ。彼氏とデートしてるのよ。
There's a moment where Ichiban mistakenly thinks Saeko wants to go to a love hotel for some shagging, but in actuality she was referring to smoking some cigarettes. There's the romantic montage of them doing fun things together. Now, how is the chemistry between these two during the date? Well, just like in the previous game, they bounce off of each other quite smoothly. But again, not really in a romantic kind of way. But regardless of how I see it, Ichiban sees it differently. He sees a ring on her finger.
一番？
あのよ、俺は元ヤクザだし、足洗った今も貧乏暮らしで毎日ピーピーしてる。
ちょっといきなり何？
バカで勉強なんてできた試しがねえし、沢城の頭にはずっと間抜け言われてた。でもよ、今はなんとか定職にもつけて仕事は真面目にやってるつもりだ。職場の評判も悪かねえと思ってる。体はとにかく丈夫な方だし、そりゃ桐生さんとかとは比べようもねえけど、まあ腕っぷしも弱かねえとは思う。酒もタバコもやりすぎることはねえ。ギャンブルもまあやらねえとは言わねえが、たしなむ程度なもんだ。こんな大して取り柄のねえ俺だけどよ、さっちゃんのことは俺が命に変えても幸せにしてみせる。だからよ、さっちゃん、俺と結婚してください。
一番。
男勝つが一番。この先何があろうともさっちゃんのこと守り抜いてみせるからよ。さっちゃん、女なのにすげえしっかりしてて弱いとこ見せねえけど、仕事して親父さんの世話して妹さんのことも気にかけてすげえと思ってる。でも一緒になったらもうそんな苦労は俺がさせねえ。親父さんの世話も手伝うし、妹さんのことでもし困ってることがあれば俺も力になる。なんなら俺が稼いでみせるから。さっちゃんは家庭に入ってくれてもいい。だからって当然家のことを任せっきりにはしねえ。掃除、洗濯、炊事に買い出し、何でも手伝うぜ。いずれ赤ん坊授かったらガキの面倒も任せといてくれ。そんでガキも一緒に いつか大家さんの墓前に報告するんだ。こんな幸せな家庭を築きました。だから天国のおやつさんもどうか安心してくださいってよ。
After that disaster of a proposal, Saeko reacts strangely, which is understandable given what just happened.
ありがとね、一番。
But then the next day, she's on some, I think it would be better if we were just friends type shit.
いや、私たちってちょっと変わった出会い方したじゃん。ある種運命共同体っていうか、同じ修羅場を何度もくぐってきたから、なんか一緒にいて当たり前みたいな感じにいつの間にかなっててさ。ただそれって男女の間柄としてはちょっと変かなって。だからお互い普通の友達の距離感に戻った方がいいと思うんだ。
And that's the last time Ichiban sees Saeko for a whole ass year because she ghosts his ass. Now, you want to know what I think the proposal scene solidifies? It solidifies the fact that this is not a love story we're supposed to take that seriously. This whole romance between Ichiban and Saeko is clearly a rom-com. There's a real romance here, but unlike Makoto and Majima, or even Kiryu and Sayama, it's mostly outside of the purview of the main drama. What we are seeing is a very bog-standard romantic comedy serve as the comedic lining to a much more serious crime thriller main course filled with dramatic twists and turns, with disturbing topics and extreme violence. To put it simply, this romantic comedy subplot is whatever the plot equivalent term would be to a comic relief character. With that being said, after watching this scene, it's very clear that Ichiban does harbor real feelings for Saeko. But I gotta ask, why? I mean, I guess we should go over what it means to fall in love again so we can figure that out. To start, sometimes people fall in love with those that truly inspire them and challenge them to be the person they want to become. Sometimes we fall in love with those that take us out of our comfort zone. Sometimes we fall in love because we believe the other person can complete us with the qualities we lack. And sometimes we fall in love to escape from ourselves and reality. And sometimes we fall in love because it just feels good. It's really only that last one that describes Ichiban's feelings towards Saeko accurately, at least judging by what's portrayed in these games. Ichiban is in love with Saeko because she makes him feel good about himself. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially given the fact that Saeko reciprocates. But Ichiban obviously went about conveying that in the wrong way. I mean, he proposed on the first date, which Saeko is supposedly fine with?
これがプロポーズなんですか？私が古い人間なんですかね？
ん？古い人間ってどういう意味だ？
結婚というのはもっと惚れ合った二人が言葉を尽くし合った先にたどり着くものだと思ってました。それなのにさっきの社長も一番のやつも幸せになれるとか将来にどんな夢が持てるとかいろいろ言うけども、その前にもっと言うべきことがあるんじゃないの？なんであいつにはそれがわからないのか。私との付き合いが長いからって甘えだよ、それは。
Yeah, later in Infinite Wealth, we find out that Saeko actually doesn't have a problem with the proposal in of itself. What she has a problem with was what was said in the proposal specifically. So basically, Ichiban didn't really portray her as an equal in the proposal speech he did. He went on and on about how he would make her life better, about how they'd have a great family, about how he would help out with the chores, about how she wouldn't have to work anymore, as if she doesn't enjoy her job. He talked about her as if she wasn't an individual with her own imperfections and strengths and goals and desires. Like, for example, why didn't Ichiban talk about what she would add to his life? Why didn't he talk about the problems they may run into and how they'll maneuver through them together? It was all about him and what he would do for her to be by his side. Now, it's bad that Ichiban was very self-centered in his proposal. I think we can all agree on that. But did that really warrant Saeko ghosting him for a whole year? That also feels like a very out-of-character thing to do given what we saw of her in Yakuza Like a Dragon. Like, that is super duper immature. How they portrayed Saeko in Infinite Wealth almost hinges on character assassination. And that's why I understand people's frustration with her portrayal in Infinite Wealth. Canonically, I guess we can just chalk it up to the fact that she did not know how to comprehend Ichiban proposing to her on the first fucking date. In short, Ichiban didn't take his JRPG fantasy glasses off when he proposed to Saeko. Not to mention the fact that there wasn't any mention of love either, which she eventually realizes after having a talk with Kiryu.
いいでした。じゃあプロポーズとかしたことあります？
当然だ。
マジっすか？参考までに何て言ったか覚えてます？
プロポーズか。ただ好きだったって言っただけだったな。
好きだった。ああ！バカだ。俺はとんでもねえバカ野郎だ。
So by the end of Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, he tells her exactly that.
さっちゃん。好きです。愛しています。
やっと聞けた。気づくの遅いって本当。
いや本当ごめんな。
私こそごめんね。ずっと無視して。
じゃあおあいこだな。
おあいこ。
本当ずいぶん待たせちまったな。でもここからは春日一番全力で挽回するからよ。実はこの日のためにとっておきを用意したんだ。
何？
驚くなよ。こいつだ。どうだいこれ。さっちゃんへの愛を言葉だけじゃねえ。文字にして表現してみたんだ。
In the corniest way possible. So with that ending in mind, what's the future of Ichiban and Saiko's relationship? How is RGG gonna handle depicting this couple? Honestly, there's no way we can adequately predict that, but given what we saw in Infinite Wealth, we're probably going to see some more rom-com shenanigans, and I don't know if I'm looking forward to that, but hey, maybe it'll be entertaining. On a side note, while Ichiban is in Hawaii in Infinite Wealth, he comes across a chick named Chitose Fujinomiya. He was in Hawaii in the first place to meet his long-lost mother, and after opening the door to his mother's house, expecting to see his mother, he's surprised by the appearance of someone else who isn't his mother. That person is Chitose.
Oh. 母親か。
お待たせしました。
お初にお目にかかります。あかれた。
Chitose claims to be Ichiban's mother's housekeeper. After conversating with each other a bit, she tries to seduce Ichiban, but that doesn't work because Ichiban is loyal as fuck, which you gotta give him points for. Since seducing him didn't work, she spikes his drink with drugs instead. After Ichiban is knocked out cold, she steals all of his possessions, then strips all of his clothes off, and then leaves him on a beach. Hold up. Let me get this straight. After drugging him, she steals all of his possessions and takes all of his clothes off, then leaves his unconscious body on a beach. I think there's information missing here. Some information with Very disturbing implications. Now, I hope my extrapolation is incorrect, but it's very hard to believe that someone would strip another person naked without doing anything else other than that. Truthfully and honestly, I hope Chitose didn't violate Ichiban, because later in the game, after Ichiban and her cross paths again, becoming friends after she apologizes for what she did to Ichiban, she doesn't hide her feelings for him very well. Not to mention the fact that there is a significant age gap between Ichiban and Chitose. Ichiban was literally an adult when she was born, and because Ichiban isn't on some Leonardo DiCaprio shit, that's not the least bit enticing to him.
お前、ハワイ来た途端、ちーちゃんなんか捕まえやがって。さっちゃんのことはもういいのか？この野郎。
そんなんじゃねえって。ちーちゃん、下手すりゃ二回りも年下だぞ。
それがいいってこともあんだろうがよ。俺は全然ありだぞ。ちーちゃん。はったく。
It really does suck when your crush doesn't reciprocate your feelings, but I'm not sure I can relate to Chitose that much given the fact that she drugged then stripped this man, leaving him on a public beach. I've never done that to anyone I've had feelings for. But yeah, what Ichiban's relationship with Chitose proves is that Ichiban really is in love with Saeko, and he's not a creep.
I stare at the stars and the sky up above and think.
We saw the different ways in which people fall in love with each other throughout this series. Sometimes it's because the person you're falling in love with brings out a part of you that you've kept hidden for a very long time. Sometimes it's because whoever you're falling in love with excites you both sexually and emotionally. We saw the twists and turns different relationships took. We saw the difficulty of coping with unrequited love. We saw how sometimes it's best you stay away from the one you love because you being with them could put their life in harm's way, which I don't necessarily agree with because at the end of the day, love is about taking risks, right? But that's what makes the ending of Majima and Makoto's love story so tragic. It's what makes the ending of Kiryu's and Sayama's love story so underwhelmingly disappointing. It's what makes the ending of Ichiban's and Saiko's love story so hilarious and embarrassing, in the endearing kind of way. If you're watching this with your significant other, I hope your story ends the way that Ichiban and Saiko's story ended. That means I hope it doesn't end, just to be clear. And I hope that it's filled with the hilarious, the serious, the vulnerable, and the embarrassing. Subscribe to this channel if you're feeling the love in the air today, on whatever day you're watching this. It doesn't matter if it's not Valentine's Day, because love is in the air every day. And most importantly of all, show some love to your significant other if you have one. Appreciate them, because that's one of the best ways to show your love for someone else, right? If you don't want to do that, well, then take a cue from the Yakuza series, because in that series, we saw multiple ways to love.
Find the joy